Televiziunea Română, întâlnirile JTI și Fundația Art Production vă recomandă Garantat 100%.
Salutare, bine v-am regăsit la Garantat 100%. Invitatul nostru din seara asta e actorul, scenaristul, regizorul, scriitorul Ethan Hawke.
I remember childhood as this, this magical time.
Dad, you say that to me every time I see you, and I stopped growing 2 years ago.
I always think that I'm still this 13-year-old boy, just doesn't really know how to be an adult.
Mr. Anderson, so you're sitting there in agony.
Captain, my captain.
If you don't do it now, you're never gonna.
This is all we need. A couple of smokes, a cup of coffee, and a little bit of conversation. To our one and only night together. And the hours that remain.
Hi.
Do I look any different?
I'd have to see you naked.
What?
Mother's got a new husband now.
I remember when I was 6. You and Mom were fighting like mad.
That's what you remember, huh?
You stay in the car. You hear me? You stay in this car. Now, I told you not to be here. I told you.
My 13th birthday's come and gone, and you never even called me.
Sorry.
Well, apology not accepted, you know what I mean?
Paints pictures of a family all in blue.
I'll stand I then, that have a father killed, a mother stained. To be or not to be, that is the question. This is a chance to change everything.
This is one of Connolly's Confederate sharpshooters. He's a legend.
You gotta hate what you're firing at. Hate it. Come on.
I would tell you to go to hell, but I think you're already there.
Oh, God! What? Andy!
You know what I learned today? I'm not like you. Just do it.
I've never been in love before.
I want my life back.
I
want to play music. Born to be blue.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Let's start abruptly
Good.
with a jump in time.
All right.
We're in New Jersey, the MacArthur Theater. You're having an acting class. You're around 12 or 13 years old.
Yes.
What do you see? What do you feel?
Well, that was... I had this experience where I was actually at the Paul Robeson Center for the Performing Arts. And Paul Robeson in America was one of the first kind of prominent black actors. And he was an athlete and a scholar and a civil rights activist. And looking back on it now, I think he's kind of an amazing model to have as what you think of as an actor, because he was so much more than an actor. And that was where my mother took me to have it was my first acting class, because I didn't have a winter sport and she needed me to be busy. And so I went there and they had an improvisation class, and the guy from the local theater company came to run with the kids as a special thing. And afterwards he asked me to come out after class, and he asked me would I ever be interested in being in a play. And that was my first play. So I said yes, and I got to carry a spear and wear armor. I was a knight's page,
It was Bernard Shaw's St. John. Impressive text.
Yeah, great play. And I got to watch all these adults sit around in dark rooms talking about God and talking about art and passion. And it seemed like an amazing profession. It seemed like better than working for a living.
Isn't it somehow dangerous to be a child actor? I mean, there are fundamental psychological changes in the mind of a child actor. I don't know if you saw it. I was thinking of Maps to the Stars, David Cronenberg's Maps to the Stars. There's a quintessence of the alienation of the stardom from the very beginning as a child. Did you think of that?
I didn't think of it then. I've thought of it a lot since, you know. When the first movie I ever did was a little bit later. I was about 14. And most of the young people that I did that first movie with are all dead. You know, River Phoenix is dead, and Amanda Peterson, who was in that movie with me, had a terrible life, you know, ravaged by drugs and alcohol. And there's something about putting young people in this pretend world of stardom and where they're treated special and made to feel important, that then when the heat of the spotlight moves on, you know, an ordinary temperature feels ice cold, you know, and it's very difficult to handle. So I'm grateful to be alive.
How was the moment Dead Poets Society? What did you learn out of it?
Dead Poets Society, only now do I realize what an incredible experience that really was. I mean, Robin Williams was a comic genius. You know, it's an overused word, genius, but he's a genius. I mean, to be near him, if he was here with us, the whole energy of the air would be different. And so to be around somebody that talented was breathtaking. And then he wasn't the most talented person on set. You know, the director of that movie is an Australian filmmaker named Peter Weir, who had done Witness, he Master and Commander, Truman Show, Gallipoli. You know, he's just a great cinema artist. And so to have him as my first teacher, or one of my first teachers, was, and the subject matter of that movie too, not just the people, but what that movie is about. Grabbing life, making the most of your time on Earth, was a very heavy thing to have at 18, indoctrinated in your brain, you know, Walt Whitman.
You wanted to be Jack London. Why Jack London?
He was an adventurer, you know. I think there's something you know, Hemingway, Jack London, there's a history of the American, you know, he's both a man's man and a thinker.
Right.
You know, and I liked that combination of, and I wanted to have, I was 18, I wanted to have adventures.
Acting in movies is not about acting, you said. It's a quotation. Acting in movies is not about acting. Isn't this the biggest and the greatest at the same time professional achievement of acting, as a matter of fact?
I don't know. You know, I'm not sure what I meant when I said that, but I think my whole life as an actor, I've been trying to not act. You know, that's always the trick. I always feel like when you do your part really well, they think, oh, that's really you. You know, Brando's one of those guys, he changed acting twice. He changed acting with, on the Waterfront, you know, or the Tennessee Williams Streetcar, you know, those were life-changing performances. But then he did it again with the Last Tango in Paris, you know, and I remember seeing when you play your part really well, they think you've left your soul on the screen, you know, and he did that a few times. But you don't think of it as acting, you know. What wins awards as acting and stuff is often a lot of good, but it's acting. It's showing off a lot. And my favorite performances are more invisible than that.
When you think of Dead Poets Society, I saw you in an interview when you talk about acting as non-acting, and you said, I did a lot of meaningful glances in Dead Poets Society. What did you mean by that?
I've tried to do less and less meaningful glances. I think what I love, like you take some of the great performances that I've loved, you know, whether it's Jack Nicholson and One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest, or Al Pacino and Dog Day Afternoon, or lots of performances we could name. There's a sense of spontaneity that you're actually seeing life captured, and you're not seeing an actor being profound. Like if you're seeing an actor trying to be profound, it's boring. That's what I was meaning. It's like I hate watching somebody play Hamlet in some meaningful way. I want to see it explode. I want to see it like dominoes fall. When it's great, it feels inevitable. You know, when you see a great painting, it seems obvious. Yeah. You know, it seems like, well, anybody would have done that. It's without effort. A great dancer, it seems like they were just doing what was natural. There's a great pianist, you know, when they play a very difficult piece, it kind of seems like they just were born knowing it. Now, obviously, they probably spend 50,000 hours working on it, but it feels, when they sit down, it says, bam, and it just happens. And that's what I mean.
You were talking about Jack Nicholson. I saw you in an interview telling a very funny story about a meeting with Jack Nicholson, and you did around 2 seconds of impersonating Jack Nicholson, and that was shocking perfect. Shocking perfect. It was something like, looks like I got the wrong guy.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what he said to me.
But you did it perfectly. I mean, how did you do that?
You know, that's my job. It's my profession. You know, I love. He's a special person and a special artist, an American artist who, you know, in a lot of ways, he explored one kind of character his whole career. I mean, there's deviations, but a lot of his best work is exploring a certain kind of masculinity, a mischievous, incorrigible part of ourselves, and trying to wrestle with that and trying to keep that alive. And I'm just grateful to him, and I hear word that he's pretty much retired, and I would have loved to have worked with him. And that story that I was telling about not working with him, as I think back on that, you know, it was an important moment in my life, you know, that I didn't get that opportunity, but I wish I had.
Another quotation, fascinating. I have an allergy to important movies. What do you mean by important movies?
Well, it's the same kind of thing we're talking about, is that movies that seem like their reason for existence is to win an award.
Yep.
You can smell it off them. Movies that have a political agenda. To my mind, a lot of great art is political, but not because it's trying to get you to vote a certain way. It's trying to tell you a truth. You know, here in Romania, if you take that film 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days,
Right.
Extremely political movie in a lot of ways. But what it is in truth is about a woman and her experiences of life, and you can see in her experiences the way the film is talking about a political situation, a country's situation, the larger societal schemes about that. What I don't like are somebody getting up and singing anthems, you know, that trying to get you to feel a certain way, whether it's the same thing I mean about not acting, you know. It's great. Like when I think about my favorite rock and roll, it's not trying to win an award. It's trying to communicate something. And a lot of times you can smell on a film or on a book that they think this is important. And whenever somebody thinks their work is important, I kind of go to sleep a little bit.
Please define old school New York actor drama. What do you understand by that?
Well, I think, you know, I had the experience of working with Sidney Lumet, and I was working with Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Sidney personified Pacino, Gene Hackman, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, in a lot of, Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep is an old school New York actor. They're not movie stars, they're artists communicating using performance. And in Los Angeles, sometimes there's a feeling that what people really want is to be a big shot and to use their success as a kind of power, And in the best of the New York art scene, you don't sense that. You sense a feeling of people trying to communicate, trying to tell stories, trying to be a part of a much larger, international collective dialogue. When you see a great movie from Russia, when you see a great film from Paris. Well, I remember the first time I saw Gerard Depardieu in a movie. It's not about being a big shot. It's about art and communication and a creative consciousness that's happening between minds, and that's a thing that you want to be a part of. And New York has its own particular identity about that, which is not unpretentious, serious. If you could be both. And that's what Sidney was. When you watch his best work, particularly my favorites, Dog Day Afternoon, Serpico, Network, Long Day's Journey into Night. There's just a sweaty, unpretentious profundity, and it's the best of it when somebody's actually profound, but they're not doing it to be profound. They're doing it because they want to tell the truth. And Sidney had that quality, and I was really grateful. I got to make his last film,
Yeah.
And so we'd started our own theater companies. We'd known each other for years, and so to get to make a New York drama on Sidney Lumet's last film was kind of magical for us.
Since we're here, let's think of Training Day. You're in the same set with Denzel Washington. He's a huge actor, a huge personality, but a huge pressure at the same time. How did you manage your own self? I mean, how did you manage your presence over there? Because it must be a clash of presences, as a matter of fact.
One of the problems when people, you must see this too all the time, when a person achieves a certain status, sometimes other people around them diminish themselves. They place the other at such a pedestal that they, and in fact, you're not being a friend or you're certainly not being a collaborator if you diminish yourself. So even though you admire somebody tremendously, you have to offer the best of yourself, like you would a great friend. To take an even greater example, like you take a writer like Shakespeare or something. If you worship at the feet of Shakespeare when you act him, you do him a great disservice. If you love something, you kiss it, you touch it, you pull its ear, and so when you're working with a great actor like Denzel, and I think he's one of the greatest actors who ever lived, you have to be careful to also not try to help them. The way that you can help them is by being your best, And so you have to not worry about what they think about you or anyone else. And it's something I have kids that are growing up now, and one of the things that I like to tell young people is that you have to, when you're acting anyway, or it probably applies to other aspects of life, you have to imagine, I would imagine that Richard Linklater is a great friend of mine. I've worked with him a bunch of times, and oftentimes I'm at my best when I'm with him because we're so comfortable with each other. And so I would just imagine that I was in a situation where I was really comfortable and pretend I was, even though I wasn't comfortable. I'd just say, well, what would I do if I was really comfortable, and start to have fun and start to be playful. And so Training Day for me was a breakthrough because it was the first time I felt able to act and perform the way I had on stage and the way I had in independent film in a Hollywood movie. Because a lot of times the pressure that comes with the Hollywood movies, it's a lot of money, and whenever there's a lot of money, there's a lot of fear.
Right.
You know, and there's, why is he wearing that coat? Why is he doing his hair like that? Why is he doing it? And you see yourself closing off. You see it in a lot of Hollywood movies. You see a lot of people posing, you know. You don't see a tremendous amount of creativity. And when you are working with Denzel, the amazing thing about him is he's creative at an extremely high level, no matter the pressure. He doesn't feel the pressure at all. But people don't understand, like, he's been a movie star for 30 years and a great actor. It's so hard to do. You know, there's people who are great movie stars, and there are people who are wonderful actors, but he's both. He's a very, very serious actor and, you know, a box office, you know, card-carrying, A-list movie star.
Let us dig a little bit more into the grammar of this idea, into the internal grammar. So you're rehearsing and you're acting. You're with Denzel Washington. You have to do your job. What do you think exactly? I mean, don't you really care about what he thinks about you? What do you do mainly? What do you think of mainly? Acting, or what is he thinking about you?
Let's put it this way, like, if you are playing a sport, right, and you're on a, I don't know what the, you know, in the U.S. they call it soccer, I think here the football, you know, when you're playing a sport, and let's say you were playing with Messi or something, one of the greatest players ever, right? You can't be trying to help Messi. Oh, yes, Mr. Messi. Oh, yes. Oh, where would you like the ball today, Mr. Messi? You got to go out there and win the game yourself. You got to try to be the best player on the court, on the field. You have to try to, that's what Messi wants, is to be challenged. Because he can't rise to his best. If he doesn't have anybody around to challenge, if there's a bunch of people kissing his ass all day, you know, then, then his work is diminished. And you see that. You see, Daniel Day-Lewis in a movie, and you see everybody kind of trying to help Daniel. What do you need? What you need is you know, somebody to want to claim the screen from him. You know, that's what you really need. Now, that's hard to do. You know, I'm not saying it's easy to do, but that's what your job is. So that's how I feel about it.
Was it a moment or a process of learning to talk and relax in the movie? So was it a certain moment when you discovered yourself, I'm more relaxed, I'm more natural, I'm okay with me? Or is it a process?
One of the sad, unfortunate things about life is the only real way to have confidence is to have experience. So that there's a certain period, no matter what you're doing, whether you're in television, whether you're an architect, there's a certain period where you have to fake it because you're doing it and you're actually not confident. And if you are confident, it's the wrong kind of confidence because it's bravado.
That's so true.
Right? You know, and once you've done it enough, you start to have real confidence. Confidence based on experience. I've had somebody die on stage with me. I've had lights fall. I've had, I've fallen in love with my co-star. I've fallen out of love. I mean, I've had all these ridiculous, stupid experiences, and I've gotten the job done. And once I've been sick, I've been healthy, I've been, you know, and once you start having those experiences and passing through them, fear leaves the room. Because you're not, once you know things, you're not afraid of them. And once there's less fear in the room, you can start to do the work you dreamed of doing and doing more interesting work. Or if you're still awake and still curious, you know, because. But so that's the right kind of confidence. So it's both. When you say, is it a process, or it's both, because there's a process you have to work through to get there, and there's a period of time where you have to rely on technique and things you've learned. When you aren't really confident, well, you can still do what you learned, and then you just have to survive. And once you've survived, you have experience.
How's maturity from your own point of view? I mean, how's seeing things differently than some years ago? And sometimes getting the sensation that you understand things.
You know, this Romanian woman that works with my mother, she's in education. Her name is Maria, and I've been getting to know her here. And yesterday, she was talking about being a teacher, and growing older is like being a tree, she said, that every year she gets another ring. And it's not the same youthful tree that was there is inside, you know, but hopefully you gain these rings of and it's just a little tiny bit each year. A certain little thing you learn that has the potential to make you stronger. Now, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, we've all meet lots of old people that aren't smart or aren't wise or aren't, you know, but the potential is there. You know, the potential to keep gaining experience and keep gaining wisdom. And that's what I'm looking for, is to keep getting these, so that because there's a great value in being young, to keep that little shoot alive inside you. But to have these rings of knowledge, acceptance, you know, courage, forgiveness, self-forgiveness, you know, understanding, insight into others. If you can keep gaining those things, then maybe you could, you know, be interesting.
You hit the nail in the head, because my next question is about acting as, I don't know, traveling through characters as a continuous process of learning. Yes, it's a sure fact that you learn a lot about yourself. But do you learn something about the human being in general? Is this a fact or an illusion?
Well, people can be idiots, so you could do anything and not learn anything. I mean, you could sail the ocean and not learn a damn thing, or you could sail the ocean and learn a lot. You know, so just because you cross the water doesn't mean it hit you. You know, it registered in you. I feel you cannot play the great roles, you know, the great Shakespearean roles, the great Chekhovian roles, the great, those kind of parts, Tennessee Williams. You can't be on a film set with somebody as smart and interesting as Richard Linklater or Sidney Lumet or you know, Angelina Jolie. You know, takes a woman like that. She's a remarkable woman. And, you know, I've gotten to live these lives where I play these characters. And in telling stories about people, you're learning about people's experiences, right? Like if you do Macbeth is basically one of the most beautiful poems ever written about the seduction of power and greed and violence, you know, and what it does to people. And if you recite that poem 80 times every day, I mean, you know, 80 days in a row, you know, for 1,500 other souls, even if you don't see the people there, you feel their soul, their presence. You can't not feel the audience, and you feel what they laugh at and what they cry at, what they're bored by, what they think is dumb, you have the opportunity to learn a lot. I've played characters who killed themselves, and if you do that right, you really meditate on that frame of mind, and you start to see and feel what it's like not to be interested in children's laughter, to find it annoying, what it's like to not like the sun, you know, to not be interested in a beautiful woman, and interesting, to not care about a friend, see it all as pretty worthless. You can work yourself through that, and you arrive at a place where you could imagine very seriously that it would feel better not to be alive, you know? And once you do that, it's hard. But you walk away from the experience having passed through something, you know? If you get to, you know, do a movie about falling in love. I did this movie Before Sunrise with Julia Delpy, you know, about being young and in love. And, you know, you feel that. And you do a scene with this woman and you stare at her and her neck and her ear and her face, and you listen to what she says and what her feelings about her mom are, and you feel like, and you love this woman, and you start to feel love, and you start to seek, what is love? How do you photograph love? How do you enact it? What is it? Why is it important? Why does it change our lives? You know? And so acting is this huge, at its best, it's a spiritual exercise. You know, I really believe this, that acting at its best is like, there are, you know, if you take a convent, you know, or a monastery, there's certain levels, you know, when they're 11 years into their faith, they're a noviette, and then they pass through and they get this. And I see acting that way too, that you play a certain amount of roles and you have a certain amount of learning. You know, if you meet Vanessa Redgrave, you know, or Ian McKellen.
I met her.
Yeah, you met her?
Here at this very
she's
show,
a powerful person.
Yeah, you're right.
And she's arrived, I mean, she's not ordinary. And it's part of her extraordinariness that it has to do with playing these roles and living. It's almost like, you know, the Native American shamanistic thing where your spirit can leave your body, you know? And when your spirit leaves your body a lot, and you, in a meaningful way, experience a lot of different things, and your emotion, your whatever that thing is inside of us that feels, when that reed is touched a lot, it has the potential to gain wisdom, you know, from those experiences. Now, you know, that said, it's just the potential. Doesn't mean you've gained it.
Since we're here, talking about Macbeth, talking about the Before trilogy, people have been talking for ages about the blackness of the human soul. At the same time, there are people talking about the light inside each one of us. I dare to ask you very honestly, when you're not an actor, when you're with yourself, which side are you on?
I think I really believe this, that people all over the world, politicians particularly, but particularly people in leadership positions, are almost forced to do this. They want to think it's this way or it's that way. They want to think we must help poor people. Poor people must help themselves. You know, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. We must go to war. We should never fight. You know, everybody wants something to be one thing. And reality is that both are true all the time, always. It's that you can't have life without death. You can't have a beautiful day without a storm. Everything exists in its opposite. And so I believe that when any of us are alone in our room, or when we're with somebody, it's almost more important when you're with another person with whom you're absolutely honest, that you can be very dark and you can be very light, and you can be very funny and you can be very depressing. You know, and that these things that we're all pushed constantly. The world asks us to say, no, it's right, no, it's wrong. And the truth is always so much more complex in any given situation. You know, everything that you do, it means you're not doing something else in this life. I mean, it's almost, if you think about it too much, it's paralyzing. And I remember when I first started becoming successful as an actor, I got really scared to work because I felt like, well, if I do that kind of job, it means I'm that type of actor. And if I do this type of job, it means I'm that. And what I slowly had to realize is that with, you know, God's blessing, you're gonna live a long life and you can do lots of different things. And there is time to make mistakes. There's time to be a fool. You know, you can be a fool and survive, was what I mean. Like, you don't, just because you're a fool on Wednesday doesn't mean you have to be a fool forever. Just because you're weak one time doesn't mean you can't be strong tomorrow. You know, and I think all of us people, oh, he behaved weakly, he is weak. Oh, he behaved honorably, he is honorable forever. You know, as if he can't be weak again.
Are you a comfortable actor to work with?
Depends on who you ask, you know. I mean, I've been told I'm impossible. I've been told I'm incorrigible. I've been told I'm, you know, I try to be a great scene partner. One of the things, I just did this movie with Sally Hawkins, and I felt about Sally the same way I felt about working with Denzel Washington, which is that if I do my job right, this other performance will be absolutely sensational. My job is to facilitate, you know, is to be worthy of this other person, because it was so fun watching Sally work. I don't know a better word than fun, but it was seeing, everybody knows this, whenever you watch somebody do, it's why we like watching sports, is to see somebody excel. Every now and then you're watching sports and you see someone excel and it feels like anything is possible, you know, and watching a great actor. So I'd like to be a good scene partner. Some people like working with me and some people don't.
In a very synthetic way, what did you learn precisely out of working with Sidney Lumet? Obviously, I'm referring to Before the Devil Knows.
Yeah, which is, I learned so many things. He's tough, Sidney. You know, he has a book on movies that is really great, but what's great about is he doesn't talk about movies like it's magic, you know? He talks about like he's making a rug, you know, or building a wall. Practical. He's a very practical person. I remember I had a scene to do, and my line was, "What time is it?" That was my line. And in the movie, my character's really nervous because I'm about to do a robbery. And I'm really nervous, and I don't want to do a robbery, and the line is, "What time is it?" And so I was playing it really nervous, like, you know, what time is it? What time? Like I was really nervous. And Sidney said to me, he said, you know, sometimes when you're really nervous, the most important thing to you is to make sure no one knows you're nervous. And it was a great direction. So instead of like being, hey, what time is it? You know, being, do you know what time it is? You know, it's, hey, what time is it? You know, the calmer and more confident I was, the more nervous I seemed. You know, and it was a great direction. And it gets back to what we're saying about two things. You know, the line is nervous. The text is nervous. The text is saying, I'm worried about what time it is, right? So don't play that. Play the opposite of that. Play, I got everything under control. And if you play everything, I've got it, and the line is nervous, then you seem like something's really wrong, you know? And it's a fascinating, it's exactly Sidney.
In the same direction, what did you learn from your friend, Richard Linklater?
Patience. You know, Rick is extremely patient. You can't, you know, Boyhood, we shot Boyhood over 12 years. 12 years. You know, most people can't stay in a relationship for 12 years, you know? And he made a short film every year for 12 years and weaved them together and let us all build a character over a decade. It's a fascinating thing. And you know, when we were doing the Before trilogy, I remember once Julie saying, Rick, you know, this movie's gonna be so boring. You know, all we do is talk. It's so boring. We need to write jokes, she said. We need to come up with jokes. And, you know, and Rick said, I've been rehearsing with you for a month, 4 weeks. 4 weeks I've spent basically 12 hours a day with you. And I am not bored. He said, and if we make a movie where I can really see you, you know, and it's 2 hours long, let's say, and somebody's bored, and he said, well, then they can go to hell because they're bored with their own life. If they're bored by that, then this movie is not for them. And I remember thinking, God, yeah, there's a certain courage in saying that, you know? And the thing about it also is saying he loves people, you know, and that, and he was just really patient to let us come forward, to let Eller Coltrane come forward, you know. I'm sure he's that way on the movies that I haven't worked with him on, Dazed and Confused, or, you know, wonderful movies where he lets the actors come forward.
Ethan, I will machine gun my last 4 questions.
Okay.
But please take these 4 questions not as conventional ones, but as questions aiming to a certain degree of your intimacy.
Okay.
Things that can be shared.
Okay.
Which is the music that you like, but I mean the music that moves you?
When I'm at home, generally one of the ways that I can contribute as a parent is I like to take the kids to school, right? And we have this bicycle that can fit my 2 youngest on the back. I can get 2 girls to this little seat that they both can sit there, and I'll ride them to school. And these 2 young girls laugh the whole way, every morning. I cannot figure out what something will make them, they might bicker for a little while, but invariably these 2 girls get along like gangbusters. And they'll laugh at something, at somebody, at a cat, at a dog, at a silly car, a silly horn, a silly thing. And their laughter is like it's just the most beautiful music. And I swear, I drop them off in the morning, and I cannot imagine a better way to start a day.
Which is the book that still means a lot to you?
There's a lot that have been meaningful to me. And you know, in the question you say still, which implies that it's one that's meant a lot to me for a long time.
Right.
And you know, one of the things that I keep asking myself is to make sure I have new books and to trust that the old ones are there. A lot of times you meet people my age and they still love, and I do too, don't get me wrong, I do too. We love the music we grew up to. You know, like you love I love Willie Nelson and the Beatles and songs that played in my house that I was growing up. I'll never love music more than that music. But I try to make myself listen to a new musician and see if I can't fall in love with a new bit of music. Because when you asked me the question about books, I thought of J.D. Salinger, and I thought of Jack Kerouac, and I thought of, there's a book I love, The Razor's Edge, a Somerset Maugham book I always loved and stuff. But I try to press myself. There's an American book called Stoner. It's very depressing, but I remember I called a friend of mine and I said, you know what this is? This is like Catcher in the Rye for 40-year-olds, this book, you know? And it's written by John Williams. And so I keep trying to ask myself to to try to find something new that wakes me up, to not just have the comfort of things. Nothing will ever surpass the old. I know, for me, it's the same way, you know, most of us love cars that our parents had. You know, like, you know, there's certain things in our brain where what we think is the coolest car is a car our dad had when we were 10 or something, you know, and we never see beyond this. So I'm scared of that question.
Which is the film that haunts you in a good way?
It haunts me in a good way. 5 Easy Pieces. It's an early Jack Nicholson performance, and it's kind of about a guy who can't grow up. You know, because there's wonderful things about staying young, and then there's damning things about staying young. You know, he can't really grow up into his relationships. You remember this amazing scene at the end where he finally gets to talk to his father, and his father's had a stroke or something. You know, his father can't talk back, and he just starts to cry because he just can't communicate. You know, and I'm haunted by that movie.
Which is the theatrical performance that you bear with you?
There's a British actor, Mark Rylance, and he gave a performance in a Jez Butterworth play called Jerusalem. And when I saw that play, my whole life I'd wondered, what would it be like to see Brando in Streetcar? Like to see to discover a great actor in a great new play. What would that be like? You know, to see something that's gonna be a classic the first night it was performed with an actor you'd never heard of who's a genius. You know, what's that like? And I saw Jerusalem at the Royal Court, and I knew who Mark Rylance was, but I didn't really, you know. And it was like watching Jimi Hendrix play. It was like, I don't know what, you know, it was like seeing Jackson Pollock unveil a painting or something. It was unbelievable. And it's those kind of moments for me that keep me working, you know, where I go, oh shit, I've never been that good. Like, what would it be like to be in that room?
I wouldn't do this, but I have to say cut.
Okay.
So
that was fun.
Thank you so much.
I didn't expect to be asked such serious questions. You're a very interesting person. I don't know, you know. I mean, first of all, I didn't expect to be in a basement, and second of all, I just didn't expect to be, you know, treated so respectfully this morning.
Thank you so much. It's been a privilege to meet you.
Yeah, privilege right back.
Tuturor celor care sunt alături de Garantat 100%, mulțumim frumos pentru încredere. Ne vedem data viitoare. Noapte bună.